So you have to manage them.
Yeah, yeah, I have to have some. Oh, yeah, no, like, no. This I felt complicated.
It's just a my thing, and I know that, and I'm okay with that. Yeah.
Let me sing opera, let me sing, I'll be good. If I,
Yeah, you definitely have to. Yeah. I think if I hadn't seen everybody, I could have like gone out and done something that I thought of, but I was just pushing. But yeah, the pink stations were starting to like, oh, it's perfect. Wonderful. Little dry.
yeah, they were when I was there.
Are you even doing video?
No.
I'm gonna buy something. There's just a cord here to plug in
Oh, okay.
sound. You're the timekeeper. I'm just joking.
At 9:59.
Whoa, we're gonna start a minute early, I think.
Oh, gosh.
Yeah. Can everyone hear me? Okay? So strange. Can everyone hear me now? Awesome. Thanks everyone for coming. We're gonna get started a little bit early. My name is Ryan. I work at the Royal Ontario Museum in Toronto. I have Sammy Kay, who's the director of Spring Hill Historic Home.
I'm gonna see if you can say this.
I'll let you do it. And we've got Ravon from National Museum of African American History and Culture. We're going to talk to you about how to humanize your social media presence. We're going to try to be quick so that we have lots of time for discussion. You saw me flip past Slido, but we are going to pay attention to Slido today. So if you have questions throughout this session, please do open up a browser, type in slido.com and enter the hashtag. You'll see a drop-down list. If you just find humanizing your social media presence, you can ask questions through that, and we'll pay attention and as we go along. I'm going to get started first and talk really briefly about what we're doing at the ROM. Last year, about November 30th actually, so almost a year ago, we shifted our strategy to become more human on social media. We had a lot of sub-branded Twitter accounts and Facebook pages and things, and we deleted them. We didn't do this lightly though. We monitored really closely for over a year and looked at the data on engagement rates and how consistent the accounts were and things like that. And we found that it was just another layer that we didn't really need because our purpose for social is to connect people to people. And that extra layer of those sub-branded accounts kind of got in the way of that real connection. It was just a level that wasn't needed. So we tightened things up. We made the potential for these connections more ubiquitous across our presence. And we were doing this before, but that extra layer was just really, really not needed. We also completely changed how and what we were posting. We recognize at the ROM that we're playing someone else's game, and there are rules out there that you need to abide by, but there's also clues if you do a little bit of research. This is Zuckerberg at F8 last spring talking about Facebook's 10-year roadmap. And if you notice, you don't see newsfeed on there. You see video, you see groups, you see Instagram, you see Messenger, you see WhatsApp, you see things about connecting people. So that's what we do. There's been a lot of chatter over the last year about leaving Facebook, and I understand those people that want to do that. But in my opinion, you're doing your organization a disservice if you delete your Facebook page. In my opinion, you need to find ways to leverage your content and the platform and find ways to get around newsfeed. So that's what we're doing. We've just started to dabble in groups, so if there's anyone here that is doing Facebook groups successfully, I'd love to chat with you about that. We have a few groups and we're going to launch a few more connected to our page. We're really looking forward to seeing how that plays out. We do a Facebook Live almost every day. We have regular shows that we do. I'll talk more about that. Obviously Instagram is big for a lot of people, so we're leveraging that more. And we're just now talking about what we're going to do with WhatsApp for our customer service people, front of house people. So we've also done a lot of work internally about making people recognize what's an ad and what's not. And so now we're really treating ads like ads on social, as well as across other forms of marketing. So you'll see less posts from us about trying to engage people to come to a program or a lecture or an exhibition. We do that through paid social now. We also do events for most of our exhibitions and programs so that people can put it in their schedule rather than trying to put a post up on newsfeed and have it compete with everything else that's going on there. This is just a screenshot of one of the Facebook Lives we do. This is Catherine Donnell on your left and Veronica DiCecco. It's called Mineral Mornings. We do it every Wednesday morning at 10:30. Sometimes we're a little late depending on people waking up. These ladies are amazing. Veronica is the host. She's a collections technician in our mineralogy department. And it's hard to see in this picture, but she has a phone on the table, and so she connects with the audience, she engages the audience, and we have a live conversation with people. And some of you may wonder, maybe that's a little too much to do it every week. But we actually have regular viewers that show up every week. And we acknowledge that, we recognize them, and we talk to them. Sandra from Mid-Michigan, she always says, shows up everyone and asks really good questions, and we have good conversations with her. And this is just one of the ways that we're trying to build those personal connections with people. By doing a Facebook Live, people get a notification that we're going live. They know exactly when we're live. They tune in. Sometimes they tune out, but the video's there and they can always come back to it. And it's not, it's not a logo talking to someone. It's two very smart women that are telling people about what their work and what they do in their daily life. I let them dictate content. I just help them with the technical aspects, the logistics, when to look at the camera and when to start, and I give them hand signals and things like that, but they handle everything. We also do Fossil Friday every Friday. Every second Thursday we do Indigenous Insights with Jeanette, who's one of our Indigenous learning resource teachers, and she's a real treasure at the museum. She actually used to work for a local news station, so she has really great media training. She's a really great speaker, and she's been leading the efforts to really integrate Indigenous knowledge and practices into everything we do at the museum. And so we're extremely to have her, and she's always quick to try new things with us. This is right when Instagram Q&A launched. So we sent her a message, and she was, sure, I'll try it. Having the opportunity to connect people directly to Jeanette is exactly what we're trying to do in our presence on a daily basis. And I'm actually I'm not surprised, but I'm happy to see that the results of our work to become more human in our social media presence has actually we've actually seen pretty healthy increases in our network sizes over the last year. I think it's pretty healthy growth. Part of this is obviously the consolidation of the different accounts that we had into our main accounts, but I think putting people in front of those logos, and we're now more relatable to our community with those people out there. Our engagements were up an incredible amount last year, and again, partly that's due to consolidation, but also we're talking more with people than talking at them or trying to sell them something. We're actually having a conversation with people, and it shows in our numbers. Ravon?
Good morning, everyone. So as Ryan said, I'm Ravon Ruffin. I work at the Smithsonian National Museum of African American History and Culture, where I am a social engagement producer. So essentially, I work on a small team to create the museum's digital strategy, content, and any social media campaigns. And so a little bit about us, we're the newest Smithsonian on the Mall, opened in 2016, and we are the first and only national museum dedicated and devoted to African American history, life, and culture. And so a little bit about us, we were fortunate when we talk about having a human presence in social media, is that we were born in this digital age, so that kind of was a no-brainer for us. That was kind of just the beginning of creating the museum, that it was always going to be about people, especially since we were telling the stories of African Americans and that journey, essentially just getting to the mall and telling that history. And so part of our grand opening strategy, I'll just go through a little bit of background. We created a social media tent that was on the mall. We had the hashtag making history, and the museum's hashtag a people's journey, which I think you can tell is very indicative of the kind of stories we were trying to capture. It's not only about the history that we're telling, but the people's journey to even having this museum was the thought that went behind that. But part of that grand opening strategy included live storytelling through Snapchat. At that time, Instagram Live did not exist, but we also had Facebook Live booths that allowed people to share oral histories that they could share on their page and with their friends. And then we also were on the mall doing some like live photos. We had hashtag models created that allowed people to interact with the hashtags on the ground and really share live content in the moment. They could see their Instagram posts in the tent as they were posting them as well. And some of those numbers really indicated the ways that people were obviously just excited that we were opening. And so we had less of a question of, are we relevant to our community, right? But it was about how do we capture that. And so you could see with all these different ways that we were sharing stories, it was really about people being able to capture their own stories in person and show, their family, their friends that they were there and they were experiencing the museum's opening. And so overall, we were able to reach like 6 million people on Facebook, 105 million people on Twitter, and doing video views on Instagram. We were able to connect with 1.5 million people. So a very successful strategy and a lot of excitement there. Something else that was created and born out of our grand opening strategy, again, was just trying to showcase that people are in the museum. And so this is our Visitor Voices campaign that we created. And I was really excited about that because there was a lot of excitement and there were a lot of celebrities, dignitaries there, and they got the kind of first run at the museum. And what we didn't want was it to look exclusive to them. And so it was really important to us that we made sure that as part of our campaign, of course, we were working with them and our influencers to showcase all the high-profile people that were there, but also showing that everyday people were there. So this is one mother and her child there, and it was really awesome. We put them on Instagram, on Facebook, and people were like, oh, that's my hairdresser out of Maryland. And so it became a really, humanizing factor for people to be able to connect with people that they knew in real time on social media. And it got them excited about coming to the museum, and it just made it seem less of a barrier to entry when we first opened, because as you can imagine, there was a lot of chaos and excitement and trying to get passes and things of that nature. So that was really important with that being a part of our museum's mission with the People's Journey hashtag. And so that also inspired, a year later or so, our museum saw the excitement of Visitor Voices and how important that was to show that people are actually in the museum, despite the difficulty that is the perception to get passes into the museum, that you can get into the museum. So we started to use our recording booths as Visitor Voices as well. And so if you've ever been to the museum, on the 3 floors of the History Gallery below ground, there are recording booths that allow people to answer prompts, whether it's about the gallery or just allowing them to process their feelings, about slavery, about Reconstruction, and different things of that nature. But we were able to go into the system and pull the videos. And so we did a Visitor Voices campaign for our first year anniversary in 2017. And for 30 days, we shared these videos across our platforms. But it's been another way for people to see themselves reflected into the museum.
and also for other people to see how others are interacting with reflection booths and just processing that information. And so we try to cover, different ages, different races, of that nature, so people start to see how other people are also going through the museum and processing the history and reflecting on the information. And so 2 years later, this is where we are in terms of numbers. The picture is old, but the numbers are accurate. But here we are with 159 followers or 159K followers on Instagram, 351K followers on Facebook, and 179K followers on Twitter. We have a very active audience, which I'm appreciative. Oftentimes I don't even have to edit something or really jump into a conversation. They tend to do that themselves. But again, how do we keep that engagement going? So for us, that's looked like shifting from looking at the numbers, the quantitative, and looking at the qualitative. Similarly to what Ryan was talking about, a lot of us have seen that Facebook drop off, ourselves included, and a lot of it you're just not going to figure out. It's just pay to play at this point, and you just never know what Facebook is going to prioritize. We've tried video, and then that doesn't work, and then some days, we'll get millions of views on it, and the next day we'll get like 40,000. So you just really never know. But similarly, we've done the same thing of prioritizing doing programming and any kind of advertisements and events instead of putting it on our page, so we're not cluttering our news feed, but also just because we want to more so target the people who are interested in that. And so that's something that we've had to communicate more to our staff across the museum, who, of course want to see their things on the page, but we have to tell them, you're not going to see the impact that you want. And so building that into our budget has been really important in terms of ad dollars. We've been putting more money behind that as well. But in terms of what we've been doing with our strategy, fortunately, again, being born in this digital age, we pretty much have been staying consistent. It's always been about telling stories. It's always been about people first. Our audience actually does not engage well with if we just throw up an object. And if we do, we try to make sure we find that human story that's connected to it. So for example, we have a hot comb in our collection. That's something I would share because many people can recollect in our community with getting their hair done as a child and that being something that was an experience with their mother, with their grandmother, putting a hot comb on the stove to straighten their hair. So we try to find those kind of stories to resonate, but for the most part, you can see here, this is the story of Amelia Boynton, a civil rights participant. And so these are the kind of stories that we try to put forward to humanize the experience. We all know about the civil rights movement, but who are those people who were behind it? And so one of the campaigns that was born was hashtag Hidden History. We created that last 2017 in March to celebrate Women's History Month. And so that's been an opportunity for us to uplift the stories of African American women. And I love it. Our audience takes control and takes ownership of our hashtags all the time. And so I can search that and they're pointing out other people in their family who they consider as hidden histories. And so those to me are the more impactful stories. So even if I see a drop in engagement in a Facebook post, I know that in the comments people are sharing whole books of their experiences of growing up during segregation and things of that nature. So those are the kind of things that we try to capture for our reporting now, rather than concentrating so much on the quantitative, because we've seen that kind of decline, but we know our audience is still engaged. It's not their fault that Facebook is deprioritizing, and we would never want to walk away from 351K people who have been there from the beginning. And so what's also been important for us has been turning to our museum's website as a hub for content as well. And that's honestly been a result of our museum seeing the impact of social media and us moving in real time to talk about subjects that come up in the news and things of that nature. And so you can see we have a blog about Aretha Franklin in the wake of her passing. And so these are things that we've been able to move quicker, more quickly to get our curators to write or edit so that we can get things on the blog. And be able to have this kind of 360 integration of content. That's been really important. And so that it doesn't end on our social media, but now we have more places to send our audience and things of that nature. Similarly, in the wake of Charlottesville, being able to have content on our museum's website about a noose that's actually in our collection. So being more timely has been really important, and seeing how our museum is more responding to that has been really crucial as well. And something I didn't mention as well was that we also created a Giphy page that's been really exciting, and that's been really important because we created that to connect with Black Twitter, and so thinking about who are the audiences that you're serving. For us, we know that Black Twitter is a really big community, and they use GIFs on Twitter, and so we created a Giphy page that allows them to share clips from our collection, our moving film collection, and use that to have conversations with each other. So that's been really important as well, again, to show that impact of the qualitative versus the quantitative.
Good morning. My name is Sammy Kay Smith. I am the executive director at Spring Hill Historic Home, and you say my town name as Maslin.
Okay.
Yeah, we're weird. We don't say it the way it's spelled. So I am kind of coming from a very different perspective. I work in a historic home, obviously, so I do not have galleries. Actually, I walk into museums with galleries sometimes, and I have no idea what I would do with all of this space. Because it's a farmhouse, so it's really, I mean, it's pretty innocuous. I am also a staff of one, so we are completely volunteer driven. I will probably say things that will make people who have even just one social media person cringe, because I'm also in charge of everything else, whether that's changing light bulbs to getting rid of dead animals on our 13 acres of property. So, I mean, it's a life. But I'm here talking specifically about our mascot, and if you want to know more information specifically all about museum mascots, I'm on a panel tomorrow, so shameless plug. I think it's at 11:30. So our Twitter page is actually run by our mascot, Tommy the Sheep. Tommy was part of our institution when I came in 4 years ago. But we weren't really doing anything with him. Like, we had a volunteer who dressed up as Tommy occasionally, like twice a year. And my board president is a advertising executive. So he was like, you know, if we're gonna have this silly little mascot wandering around, we need to actually do something with him. So it started on Facebook. That was the only social media platform we had when I came in, and it was very, very, very inactive. And now we are mostly active on Facebook, Instagram, and Twitter. Like I said, we have 13 acres of property. I have a gorgeous lane. It's really good for Instagram. It's really pretty property. We are also stationed on the Underground Railroad, which means that we tend to focus a lot on some heavier subjects, including slavery. Doesn't always get focused on up north, but we think you have to understand why people are leaving slavery and being on the Underground Railroad to understand the Underground Railroad. And then the home was lived in for about 150 years, so I have a lot to play with. But unfortunately, that means that most of our subject matter has tended to be a little bit more serious. And when I came in, I wanted to really instill this like sense of whimsy and fun, which surprised a few people, to say that simply. And that is why Tommy ended up taking over our Twitter account. So Tommy is sitting over there, and that's him in our community garden. We were a farm for many, many, many years, so we have a local community garden that sets up, and I love going down and taking pictures of him down there. He is named after the founders or the builders of our home's son, who passed away when he was 4 or 5 months old. That's why it's spelled weird. That is how you spell Tommy in the 1790s, apparently. And when you talk with some of our other museum mascot people, they all have different personalities. So Tommy is usually described as cute, sweet, silly, and happy. There's other ones that are snarky and punny. I am really bad at puns, so don't ask me to do that. But he lets me do a few things that I can't really do as Spring Hill. So first things first is I am allowed to say whatever I want as Tommy. This is a photo of one of our family members. I have no idea what's happening. We just found it. It's like maybe an inch tall. And Irene has always been one of these people that is perceived as this like very gracious hostess. She's wonderful. I mean, born in the 1880s. And then I have this silly picture of her rolling her eyes at something. I'm not sure what. I also have pictures of her with pots on her head. It's apparently a thing. But it allows us to have a little bit more fun. I couldn't find my tweet because it's from a few years ago. that I really wanted to share, which is Tommy making fun of the Grimke sisters. So for anybody involved with the abolitionist movement, there's these two sisters who are really, really involved, and all of their portraits, they have these ridiculously comical frowns. And I love making fun of them on social media. Spring Hill can't do that. Tommy can. He gets to have adventures outside of the house, so there's been lots of adventures of him here at MCN. There's pictures of him going to other conferences. I was in a production of Sweeney Todd, so all of the girls in the cast took a picture with him. And going to visit other historic homes and museums is a really big part of Tommy's persona. And it's great because then I get to also acknowledge what other organizations are doing, especially in our part of Ohio. We have lots of very small organizations. We don't always get to showcase ourselves as much as we should. So this is a great way for me to go, hey, look, the picture on the right-hand side is at another local house and they have a mascot. So they get to have fun and show what we're doing and that there's really cool things happening in an area where everybody always says, well, there's nothing to do here. Behind the scenes fun, that's a tweet from us working on our museum mascots session. And then all sorts of weird things that I just get to do because I'm running Twitter as a sheep. This is the weirdest part of it's not the weirdest part of my job, but it's definitely up there. There's lots of pictures up right now of us decorating for Christmas, so I have tons of pictures of him like stuck in Christmas trees, so I get to, then there's a reason for why I'm sharing these things. And then I just get to be silly and do weird things. That's one of our bed warmers. Last year for Christmas, our decorator really wanted to put real taxidermy squirrels in one of our trees. I hate taxidermy animals. It freaks me out. And that squirrel was sitting outside my office. It terrifies me. But so I get to just kind of do unusual and silly things that don't always necessarily have anything to do with our collection or our stories, but are like, hey, look, there's this cool thing. Or, you know, I'm hiding in a desk. It happens. And the other really fun thing for me, and that has been really great, especially coming from a smaller organization, because I cannot hope to compete with anything that these two are doing. Like Facebook Lives, I've done like twice. It's very exciting when I have time to do things like that. I wish I could do more. But there's a really great community of other museum mascots who are all kind of grappling with very similar problems. We are all mostly from smaller organizations. And it's a way for us to not only connect with our community, connect with younger people, like little kids, not like younger people like me. But also we do exchanges, we have art competitions, and it's creating this whole thing where I now have tons of followers from England and New York. They would have never found me before because I am now friends with a humorist on your right side. Was my exchange partner. So Tommy went up to New York for a month and then humorists came to us for a month. And you know, we just get to make these connections that aren't always possible for smaller organizations like us. And it makes things a little bit more fun, a little bit more lighthearted, especially in an organization where I'm talking about slavery. Yeah, it's a real uplifting topic at times. But that is kind of what we are working on. I know it's kind of different and weird, but it's been incredibly successful for us, especially for our size. And I think we are opening for questions. Is that correct? Awesome. So anybody have questions? I will run around with a microphone if need be. We had to do that in my last session.
Does this mic works? Okay, good. So we do have a surprisingly a couple of questions on Slido. So thank you, the anonymous people that asked those questions. Someone wants to know, did the ROM delete its sub-accounts or leave them live as archives but no longer updated? We totally deleted them all. We consolidated, we got in touch with Facebook and we consolidated the various pages that we had, and then on Twitter, we made them private for a few weeks until we could do data capture, and then we deleted them. So we put out a public call that said they were closing down, and then asked people to follow our main account, which I half assumed they were doing anyway, but there was a lot of overlap, and that was again another reason why we decided to close those accounts down. And it was really difficult internally, actually. People really had an emotional connection to their Twitter account, so it really took us a long time to convince them that this was the right thing to do. And we used the data to help with those conversations. So it wasn't a personal decision, it was based on data and it was based on doing right by our community. So most people got that, some people took it a little bit hard, but you know, it's at the end of the day, we're trying to connect with people, and what we were doing wasn't working, so we had to switch it up. Samantha,
Yes.
can you speak to numbers and how much growth Tommy has seen on Twitter?
So this is going to be incredibly underwhelming. I started the Twitter account originally as Spring Hills Twitter, and about a year into it, we switched it over to Tommy. I have like hundreds of followers, not thousands. I would love to have thousands of followers. I don't even have thousands of followers on Facebook. So yeah, we have seen a significant growth, but I also kind of can't speak too much because I started it. So like obviously we are in a better place than we were when I came in without a Twitter account. But yeah, I think we have about 400 followers, which is more than we have members, which is exciting.
Yeah, yeah. It's, I mean, yeah, you don't have to have hundreds of thousands of followers to have those human connections and have really good engagement.
Yeah.
So, cool. This is kind of generally for everyone. Do you guys have internal social media processes to source content from different stakeholders in your organization? And if so, what do they look like? I'm looking at you, Ray.
That sounds more like your question.
We do. They're still also in development. We are still new. But we do try to work with our curatorial team to get content from them as we receive new objects in our collection, as they become available. And so mainly what that looks like, honestly, is just kind of boots on the ground, the social team, the three of us, just knowing who to go to, building relationships. It's a lot of work of just relationship building is what it is. So one, that people even know what we're doing or what we do on a day-to-day basis, and that's something our audience would be excited about, so they kind of just know when to approach us or let us know that something's even happening. But more so like on the blog side, it looks like, being in communication about the themes that we're, covering for the quarter, for the year. And for many of you who do social, it looks like Women's History Month in March, Black History Month in February. For us, we do Black August. That's a time where there was a lot of civil rights movement in August. So we look for a lot of content around that. And so sending that out across the museum. And then something that we're looking forward to is being more present at our OCA, Office of Curatorial Affairs, meetings and doing more presentations. So that would allow us to better update them quarterly with the kinds of things that we'd be looking for, so we can get things from them ahead of time, because the biggest issue for us has been just capacity with us being new. And just the nature of our work. Our staff is pretty strapped in a bunch of different directions, which it just might sound wild that we're just now really getting to our blog and kind of like getting it established. But as many of you know, if you have a blog, it takes a lot to keep it updated. So it looks like that. And then I'm on the public affairs team. And so our media folks, they'll do the copy editing and things like that. And then my background is in history. So I do a lot of the editing for scholarship and our brand voice, since I'm kind of like in that middle ground there. But it really just looks like our team just, being in constant contact of like, we heard this is happening, or that you're doing this thing. We love a blog. Our audience, would really love this content, and showing them how we worked with other people in the museum to do a story, a blog, Facebook Live, or anything like that.
Yeah, I think, I can use this one. I think generally as social media people, we're really good at building public awareness of our institutions and what we do. But I think we sometimes forget that we have to also do that internally. Not everyone is following your Twitter feed every day. Not when I say everyone, your staff. They're not always aware of what is happening on social. And so in my opinion, you really need to take time to really build that awareness internally run workshops with your staff, teach them how to take a good photo for Instagram, teach them, you know, the value of doing this work and integrating it into what they're already doing. You know, curatorial staff are writing every day. There's no reason why that content can't get repurposed in some fashion for social. You know, we've done a lot of work over the years since 2012 in teaching our staff to recognize good content opportunities in their day-to-day, so that, you know, stuff will just pop up on social and we're tagged properly and they're using the right hashtags and things like that, and we just retweet it or we just share it. You know, so it saves us from having to run around the building and capture all these things behind the scenes. Our staff know what to do and can do it for us, and it just kind of goes right into that being more authentic, being more human, because it's coming from Dr. Kay Sonahara, who's looking at Greek coins today, you know, and you can follow her and see the amazing stuff that she's working on, rather than from a logoed account, like our main handle. So that's what we've been doing. There's so many questions in here. Does anyone want to ask a question in person?
That makes it easier,
Of
actually.
course.
Okay. We'll do Hannah in the back and then Hillary Morgan.
Yeah, I had a question for Raven. I mean, it's for all of you, I guess, but really for you, dealing with such a huge variety of subject matter. You have things that are really light and exciting and things that are really dark and difficult for people to process. How does the social media team deal with voice? Because you talked about in your voice and having that. Is it kind of like a strategic, this is our voice on certain things? How does that get decided, and how do you implement it and evaluate how it's working while maintaining like consistency across this huge organization's accounts?
Yeah, that's a really great question. We're kind of fortunate because, I mean, we're a government institution, so a lot of our voice is guided by the fact that we try not to have really an opinion as much as possible. We're just trying to state the facts of a historical moment and things of that nature. In terms of like the style, it's really just about being as approachable as possible. But you're right, and it's also about being like as tender as possible, because we do talk a lot about civil rights struggle and things of that nature. And so I do a lot of reading just to make sure that, you know, we are being sensitive to how we say certain things, and we don't always get it right. You know, and a lot of times that evaluation unfortunately comes after you posted it and you do get comments. And you know, you're like, oh, you know, or something recent, you know, with Stanley passing, we posted the Black Panther on Twitter, and the first comment was, I mean, the copy said, you know, Stanley has passed, we're remembering him today, to that effect, and then, you know, he co-created the Black Panther, and someone took offense of, oh, he didn't just create the Black Panther, he created the whole Marvel Universe. And so that was a moment where, you know, we didn't get it wrong technically, but maybe it did look a little deaf in that, you know, he didn't just do this one thing and we didn't honor him to the fullest that we probably could have. So that's like a small example, but we typically just try to be as careful as possible, you know, using enslaved instead of slave, to, you know, remind people that that's not an inherent condition, and things of that nature. So it is a lot of academic work on our part, which can just be like heavy. People don't realize how much research goes into our content, just because when you're dealing with marginalized communities, that history isn't even readily available, and a lot of what we do talk about on social media, you can't even really find in our museum, because we're trying to tell more stories beyond our own walls. So it does take a significant amount of editing. So thankfully I do have 2 other people on my team who we can read through each other's content, and proofread each other. But it really has been something that's kind of been like organically created in terms of like how our audience has received what we're saying. And so for the most part, I just hope that it's like legible, that the most people can read it, that there aren't any typos, and that we're getting the dates correct. And then from there, we kind of just like address the tone. But we do try, we don't get a lot of opportunities, I can admit, to be playful. So like this week, I've been playing around with like cookbooks for Thanksgiving. Like we can make that a little more lighthearted and things like that, because we do have to talk about so many, you know, more heavy topics, yeah.
Hey, John?
I was curious if you want to talk a bit more about Facebook groups. You know, you dip your toe in, but
Yeah.
just how that's going, what you're thinking about it, and also I would be so concerned of being overwhelmed by notifications on top of what is already an overwhelming
Yeah.
for people to talk to.
Yeah, that is like, yeah, notification burnout is a thing. I think, you know, we have all of these different groups at the museum, we have this certain volunteer groups. They're called Friends groups. There's a Friends of Paleo. There's a Friends of South Asian Art and Culture, and I think there's about 8 or 9 of them. And they used to have Facebook pages, some of them. And with just sort of the shift towards groups, thought wouldn't it be great to try them as a group? And so they're not launched yet, but we're going to launch them in a little bit. We have another group that we just launched called Hack the ROM, and it's part of an initiative that we're going to do. We're going to do an online hackathon with Indigenous communities in the north of our province that can't really visit the institution. We're a provincial museum, so our mandate is to reach everyone in our province. And we were trying to think of ways that we could gather people around a shared experience through social, and we thought a group would be a perfect way to do that. We handed the keys over to that group to the educator, Sarah Chu, who is a digital learning person at our institution. So she's in charge of it, and also Jeanette is leading that program as well. So basically they run it. So it's up to them to gauge their community and keep conversations going and things like that. We're trying to be strategic if we do start to expand things again, because we just went through a whole consolidation thing. So we have very long and serious conversations with people about keeping up with their community and being responsive and things like that, and making them aware that they can't just start a group and not do anything with it, but they have to actually go in there on a daily basis and ignite conversations and things like that. So right now it's completely experimental. We don't have any sort of like goals that we're trying to meet. We just we're really just interested in how it'll play out and which one will work and which ones won't. Since we've consolidated things, we're a little less afraid now of closing down accounts. I think everyone pretty much understands that things change on social and you have to change with it. But yeah, I mean, there's lots of examples. I mean, everyone is in a group of some kind on Facebook, and so some of them are really engaging, some of them are not. So, we just take those personal experiences and translate that to the museum side of things. Yeah.
Just thinking similarly, because our Facebook messages are actually closed, because one, they were overwhelming,
Yeah.
but two, part of Facebook is monitoring hate. And so I'm just wondering, in terms of like security, are the groups closed, or how you all, especially dealing with Indigenous communities?
Yeah, they're closed groups. Yeah, so we talked about that. We're still sort of debating whether our friends groups will be completely open or closed. Part of you don't have to be a member to join the friends group. You just have it be an interest in that area. So we've talked about trolling and things and just having a public group. So I think what we're going to do is start off as closed, so people have to ask to join and they have to tell us why they want to join. The great thing about a group is you can ask questions before people are allowed to join, so you can vet people before you let them in if you have a closed group. So we really like that feature, make sure that people are genuine when they're asking to join. And yeah, I mean, we'll see how it goes. Yeah. Yes, in the back.
This is just to follow up about groups. We just launched a teaching or one for a specific Facebook group for teachers. I'm at the American Civil War Museum in Richmond, and we chose to do it collaboratively. So we run it along with Lincoln's Cottage, Ford's Theater, the Kenosha Civil War Museum in Wisconsin, and Seminary Ridge. And by doing it together, it helps take some of the burden of
Awesome.
someone from a single institution always having to be the person to check. And so it is a closed group, especially because from my experience on our social, we get probably an equal amount of negative as we do positive.
Yeah.
And so there's like very strict rules, and we do ask questions when you join. And so far, we haven't had any issue with it. But if it is a subject matter where you can make it a collaborative or like a partner thing, it has helped a lot on, taking some of that burden off of a single organization. Plus, then you just get better varied content for the people who are in the group anyway. So the teachers have been real responsive to that as well.
I have a question for you. Do you, how did the conversation go with the different institutions? Like, how did that work? And
It took us probably 6 months of talking and coordinating everyone's schedules, and we all wrote sort of like these are our non-negotiables.
right,
And everyone had to agree on those. And then it took a while of just the logistics of getting everyone like in the group and building a schedule, and
Mhm.
so we luckily started with people that we already do partner programs and have done stuff with, so we knew that there wasn't going to be like a ton of pushback as far as content.
Okay.
But we did have some folks, there's a wide range of level of social media engagement between different partner organizations, and so, some of them didn't feel comfortable having it come directly from their organization, so they built like an education Facebook page, more or less, and that's the one who is in the group that they didn't want it to come directly from. So there was some logistical stuff like that, but it did require a good amount of
Yeah,
like vetting.
yeah.
But it's going well so far.
Cool. That's good to hear that. I'm always interested to see how people, like how they attack groups. It's, a lot of people do it differently. It's cool to see. Let's take a question from Slido. Raven, do you archive the visitor videos in a way that is available to researchers or the general public? This is from a history curator.
Great question. So right now they live on our YouTube channel. We do have hundreds, thousands more, and that's something we do have an oral historian on staff, a couple, but there's one specifically working on the recording booth videos. I'm not exactly sure how those will become available in the future. I know we have a lot of conversations with them about putting, like if she finds one that she thinks would be great on YouTube, she'll send it over. I just got access not too long ago to the back end to see the videos that are being collected, but that's something that is a larger project. Like we had fellows come to metatag and all that stuff, the videos and getting them in their proper like categories. And it's also just very tricky because we're dealing with the public, being able to make sure we are properly following privacy laws and things like that. So sometimes people, like kids, will go into the booths. And you're supposed to answer if you have permission, but like the adult's not present, they might be like at the door. So that becomes like a whole challenge in itself. So that's something that we also have to work through in terms of like permissions and things like that. Like people get an email, but just trying to figure out the most legally binding way that we're making sure that we're not, breaking any laws there either. But I will keep you informed.
Can I ask, how many people are here from like a curatorial department or have some good, yes? Because one of the questions is, in Slido is, we talked a little bit about it a minute ago, but it was, can you talk a little bit about your process for setting up recurring live events like mineral mornings? How do you choose the topics? So I use our data on these to really excite people about sitting in front of a camera for me. Like I realized early on in this work that I'm not an expert in all the areas that the museum is an expert in. So I really needed to leverage the expertise of our curatorial staff and really get them out in front of our accounts. And so we did that by doing training. We used to hold monthly workshops where we teach people all the things about social. And so then they started to come to us with ideas. And so when Facebook Live first became a thing, we started just interviewing people because we weren't really sure what we were going to do. And then curatorial said, hey, I want to try this, I want to try this. We've done numerous things. I call them shows, the regular ones that we do. We've actually canceled a few shows. We used to do one called Microscope Mysteries, and we have this really fancy, expensive microscope that we just got, and so the curators just wanted to like show what they were doing with it. So one time we put a bee under the microscope and zoomed in, and it was really cool. But we didn't get the return on investment. We didn't get the engagement with that one. So we did that about 4 or 5 times, and then we canceled it. And so they're always coming up with ideas. But immediately after we're done a Facebook Live, because you get the metrics right after you're done, so I say, okay, you had 500 live viewers, you reached 2,000 people. When was the last time you gave a lecture to 2,000 people? And then you can just see their eyes go, and then they're like, okay, next week I'm gonna do this, and then I'm gonna do this next week, and then we're gonna do, right now on Fossil Friday, we're doing like, it's like our curator is doing like intro to paleo. So he's doing like, he's repurposing a class he teaches at U of T, and he's just condensing it down into like a 25-minute talk. We're on fossil fishes right now, so we've got a long way to go. But you know, it's fantastic to see them, you know, recognize that things that they already do, just applied in a different way. And so I really use metrics to play their ego a little bit, but I really use those numbers to say, look, I can get you in front of 5,000 people if you do this. And they're like, okay, I'll do that.
How long is each segment typically?
They're different. So generally they last no longer than a half hour. I think Jock had this question too. We really try to have a host that has a phone or a laptop that can tune into the Facebook Live and engage with our community. We don't do many where it's just someone talking at you, because that's not the point of doing it. But it takes a while to get the host up to that level of, to be comfortable, to also be, you know, keeping things going, but also watching on their phone. So there's one, our Indigenous Insights, we don't have, Jeanette doesn't do the phone thing yet, but she's working up to that. So we'll hopefully have that live engagement in the next few weeks. There's one today, actually, a few hours ago, if you wanted to check it out. But yeah, you know, we just want to have that conversation with people. We give people shout outs. We, you know, say, hey, Sandra, thanks for tuning in again, and, you know, things like that. Last Fossil Friday, my sister tuned in, so it was fun to have her on, and she was blowing up the comments and stuff like that. So, yeah, and then also with Facebook Live, it stays on your Facebook page. People get a notification. They can change their settings so that they can see it first, so they always get a notification when you go live. And we always see the viewership grow over time, so in 24 hours it usually quadruples. So then I follow up with an email and I say, hey guys, here's your video, here's the link directly to your video from yesterday, here's the current reach numbers and viewership, and then, you know, then you'll see them share it on their personal Facebook or things like that. So yeah.
Do you know the retention rates?
It depends. Yeah, so we played a lot with like time of day, and the ones that we do regular, the retention rates are better than the one-offs. There's also little tricks, like it takes 10 or 15 seconds for people to show up. So we burned some time in the first little bit, like, you know, like, remember like talk shows, and like as they're like panning in, like everyone's talking and like laughing or something, like we'll do that. I've had curators like do a walk-in before, you know, you always see that on the news. Like we'll do one in the Paleo Lab, and I'll say, okay, curator, go outside, and I'll wave at you once we're live for a few seconds, and he'll do a serious, like he'll do a walk-in and come and stand on his little X and then launch into his thing. So I think, yeah, you have to experiment with it, play around with it, and see what works. But for us, doing the regular thing has really built an audience around the various topics that we do.
So it sounds like you have usually 2 people on the screen.
Usually,
Yeah.
at least, yeah. Yeah, we really like to have that one person that's just there to keep things moving and to engage the community. Yes?
Is anyone using like IGTV successfully? Or are we all
Successfully is the
Successfully is the
question.
trick part.
Yeah.
We put it up there. It's there right now. You know, we're like on a lot of platforms, so we're just trying to figure out what IGTV serves for us at this moment. Right now, it's been that if we have video content, we'll put it up there so that we have an opportunity to share the whole video. Successful? I'm not sure.
Yeah, same. Yeah, I have a colleague that we work together, Jackie and I, and if we're both together, then we'll go live on Instagram at the same time as we go live on Facebook. But we've never really done IGTV. Like I think we've uploaded a few things, but yeah, never really saw great
See, there's
uptake
a
with
comment
it. So
section, but we don't find that people are really engaging in that way. So it typically serves that, I mean, because I'm posting it on the page, and then my colleague, she runs our stories, and the swipe up feature. So it's like, I don't know if it's really worth it at this point. Like, we're already swiping, we put it on the page, so we'll see. We're thinking about strategies for it, but similarly, like, we also have been doing a lot of Facebook Lives as of late, so it would be something that, as we rethink our Facebook strategy, we'd probably build that in.
Jean?
So I have kind of a fun question for Sam.
Oh gosh.
If Tommy had a voice and was to go on a live Facebook
Oh
Live,
my God, that's awesome.
what would his voice be?
Tommy doesn't have a voice specifically for that reason. Because, so one of our former directors, our second director of our institution's name was Tommy. Tommy was a woman, and I have been getting comments from her children telling me I'm spelling Tommy's name wrong, and I'm like, no, this is the infant that died. Sorry, it's really depressing. So no, we avoid it specifically because of that. Plus, I have an incredibly active group of actors. P.S. Actors are the best people in the world. They are very active for us on social media. That's probably because they're all like under the age of 30. But they're phenomenal. P.S. Get actors. They will post a lot on social media. But they're all volunteers, and I have concerns about being consistent with a voice. So it's fairly easy for me on text to be consistent. And I obviously play to my strengths and don't do a whole lot of puns. I got into a pun war with Mark the Mammoth once, and I failed epically. So yeah, but yeah, that is why I don't want to have to deal with it. I already have to replace this because the company has stopped making this sheep, and I'm down to 2.
Oh no.
So we're getting a new Tommy in the near future because apparently having 5 sheep wasn't enough. I've lost 3 over the past 4 years.
Did you guys have a question earlier?
No, I think it was all answered.
It was all answered?
Yeah,
Okay.
it's great.
So we have about 5 minutes left. We can let you go early if you want. But there is one question I think we should talk about on Slido real quick. Any advice to talk to your senior staff about making your social channels more playful? Any advice, Tommy, the sheep?
I just kind of consult with myself. Actually, no, that was something that we dealt with. So I have a very, very, very old sign at the end of our lane that when I came in, okay, so the house that I worked for was built by Quakers, and we didn't have anything to put up on the sign, so I put up "We're Quakers, like the oatmeal," because I had nothing else to do, and I felt like it was funny. My jokes are really bad. I'm not humorous either. And my board president drove by, and he told me this about a year after the fact, and goes, "I was really angry the first time I drove past, and then the second time I drove past, I went, oh, that's kind of funny." So I am very much of the opinion that I just kind of do things and then tell my board, which is essentially my boss. And for the most part, they've let me. I did an entire morning exhibit because it sounded like fun. I am not very strategic in anything. I do apologize. I literally go with, well, that sounds like fun to me and my friends, so like that sounds like something we would do. And that's usually how I do that. But I'm incredibly lucky. My board pretty much is just like, all right, sure, Sam, go ahead. So I don't have good advice, sorry. Ask for forgiveness.
Yes, I think that's really good advice. Ask for forgiveness, not permission. Did you want to?
I was going to say playful just isn't really a concern. Well, I guess for us, it's more so about getting them relaxed and to understand that their knowledge is wanted by our audience. Mm-hmm. So a lot of what you've been talking about with the Facebook Lives is a challenge for us of them even seeing themselves, like they know they're experts, but for some reason they don't believe that our audience wants to know that.
Yeah.
So they go to all these conferences and all these things, and then like we can't get them in front of the camera, or working with them to do Q&As on Twitter and things like that. So it's more so like reassuring them the value that they have to our audience. And so a lot of that looks like you said, sending them the report after we've done something so they can kind of like see that engagement and realize that our audience, does want their expertise and to hear from them. A really exciting moment, we did a Military History Month Q&A with our guest curator, and we had worked with him in the past to do like a little video in the gallery, and we showed him everything, and people had like gave him nicknames online and like all this stuff, like they loved him. So then we did the Q&A, and it was so funny. So he was like, "Are you guys ready for the war room?" Like, and it was really intense. So I have this picture of him in front of the TV with his hands or his head in his hands, like in front of a Twitter thread, because he's like trying to answer the questions. Like, no, delete that, go back. It was 1942. So stuff like that, where they realize they can get into it. And so now he'll be like, "Are you ready for the next video? I'm ready for the next one. Let's do this thing." So working with him repeatedly has been helpful. And then some of that is, on our marketing team. Hands of getting them like media trained and things like that. So if you have that opportunity, just so they can get more comfortable in front of the camera. But I do find that it helps to start them off with like Instagram posts where we just do like little segments and we tell them if you mess up, you could just do it again. It's no big deal. We're not live. And then gradually moving them toward the live. But you just kind of have to know your staff. Like I know there's just some people, they're just going to come off really dry and they're just not the best person to put in front of the camera. And so we just try to work around that as much as possible. But I think, more stroking of the ego is going to be necessary for us.
Yeah.
Can I add something else? So this is offline, but I've recently been working with a friend of mine is a reenactor. And I do first-person stuff at the house, so I run around in costume. That's how you guys all got me. I run around in costume all day. It's great. But he's been asking me to come to a lot of his reenactor groups for similar things. These gentlemen are incredibly knowledgeable. They're all museum professionals for the most part, or they are military professionals right now. So they're incredibly knowledgeable, and they want to do more first-person stuff, but they're like, "But I don't know everything." And I'm like, "I don't either." So one of the strategies we've been using is actually trying to incorporate more of my actors who actually don't know the history, but are really good at just walking up to people and being like, "Hey, what are you doing?" And just kind of being obnoxious or getting into fights over like women's rights or something like that. I was a suffragist on Sunday, so I got to get into fights with people. It was great, and chained myself to the state house stairs. But things like that, and then they get a little bit more relaxed because they realize I'm willing to play with them. And yeah, I don't know everything. Like I do 1822, and I cannot remember who the president is for 1822 to save my life. I've looked it up 20 times, and I just usually look at people and go, "I don't know, I can't vote. Like, why would I know who the president is?" But it's actually proven to be really great introducing people who are really comfortable being in front of people to people who are like, "Well, but wait." And that's worked really well. It's a slow process, but it's working really well. Offline, I'm assuming it could do the same thing online because it's just putting them in front of a camera.
Yeah. I mean, a big part of it is that they're scared they're going to get it wrong.
Yeah.
So,
And that's our problem.
yeah, just really showing them like it's okay. It's social media. People fumble all the time. They really like that authentic, interaction with the camera has been something we have to constantly remind them of.
We're all just people. We're all just people. Thank you, everyone. Thank you for coming. Thank you for the questions. That was awesome, ladies. Thank you so much. Thank you so much. Yeah, I'm really glad that because we only took a half hour to do it.
Yeah, no, that was good.
I'm really big on like conversation.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I think that was really
Good.
Okay, yeah, where were you?
I was at the Kissimmee Museum.
Okay, yes.
Named after the former president. So where the curators got sent on a broad trip. The native flat visit.
Oh, yes.
And he was everywhere.
Yeah, I live near the McKinley Monument and they have a Flat William. And they send him around. He's not quite as
we just use our
but
phone.
every now and then he'll go on adventures.
Yeah, we don't have like a DSLR.
Volcano wood was very popular.
Oh yeah.
And then we just
No, we use our phone.
We were at a
Yeah, I mean, like we have like a gimbal who helps steady the camera to be done a lot of times.
I think they would get a kick out of it.
Oh, definitely.
They don't think of him as a mascot, but they.
But you know what? It's really popular. There's a tavern where I live in Cleveland, and like the owner of the tavern runs their Twitter account,
Yes.
and it's hilarious. I mean, and they just are braver than I because I am always very wary about doing like real people things.
Yeah, we're gonna go in the gallery
But it's
and
just, it's
do
so much
the-
fun and it's so silly and you can get away with.
Well, and it was fun because I needed help sometimes. I couldn't hold
Yeah,
something.
that's the hard part.
And people around me,
Yeah.
like, getting games and say, if you could take a picture of like holding this little flat line and like,
Oh my gosh, this thing is such a conversation starter.